So it's a Democrat area. So the shooting took place in a Democrat area, and the people there were family and friends of victims. So what you are likely to get when you set this up is obviously emotions running incredibly high, and also an agenda that is obviously very clear. And this thing turned into a debacle right from the start, with people asking questions that were utterly inappropriate on a moral level. Instead, they're going to feature students who are left-wing. So Cameron Kasky asks Rubio a question, and in the process of the question, he says something that is so deeply immoral, it's shocking and it should be gut-churning to you.
Senator Rubio, it's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 and not look at Nicholas Cruz, but the point is, you're here, and there are some people who are not.
Okay, that right there, it's hard not to look at you and be looking down the barrel of the shooter's gun. I understand you just went through something. I understand what you went through was difficult and terrible and horrible, and no person should have to go through that. I get all of that. That statement is deeply immoral. That is a disgusting statement. Marco Rubio didn't shoot anybody. Your obligation to be a moral human being and say moral things does not stop when you experience tragedy. Okay, that CNN special last night was designed to do one thing, and that was to drive a moral wedge between fellow Americans. So that guy right there is obviously a political actor with a political agenda, but he was portrayed on CNN as just a sheriff, right? Just a law enforcement official. Okay, the guy's a Democrat. Okay, again, the implication is that Dana must not care about children because Dana doesn't agree with Emma Gonzalez on this issue. It got worse than that. An audience member actually called Dana Lash a murderer in the middle of the special. Nobody says a word. It's just incredible. And if you believe that 300 million people in the United States have to have their gun rights removed from them instead of us focusing on how to fix this issue, if you think we're all that unsympathetic, then I would suggest you have a screw loose. You actually do have a problem. The father of one of the murdered students trying to push Rubio to say that guns were the sole reason for the shooting, and Rubio won't go there, and the crowd starts booing him, which again demonstrates the silliness of this. It is true, by the way, that guns were a factor here because the gun was used. Just as in any murder, the murder weapon is a factor. But does that mean it is the sole factor? Of course not. That's ridiculous. But we can't handle that in the United States, so it always has to come down to one thing. And of course, Marco Rubio has to be browbeaten for being a Second Amendment advocate. The worst thing you can do right now, in a time when everyone is on the same side regarding the horrors that just happened, the worst thing you can do is claim that those of us who disagree with you are evil and nasty. You're seeing movement. You are. I mean, just a bit of political advice. You are seeing movement from people on the pro-gun side saying we'd be willing to look at certain gun control measures we may not have been willing to look at before. I may not agree with that policy decision on their part, but that is what is happening in real time. Instead of you embracing that, instead of you saying, you obviously want to come to the table, let's see if there are places where we can agree, instead of us all coming to the table on issues that may not have to do with confiscating weaponry, but instead may have to do with securing schools, on those issues, instead of you doing that, you are overtly alienating people who disagree with you. So they're shooting themselves right in the foot with this sort of stuff. And worse, they're dividing the country. And that's really what this is about. They're really about trying to get people out to the polls, trying to use this as a wedge issue. They think they can get people really excited. I promise you, all of the anti-gun advocates who are so deeply excited about going to the polls, there are a lot more Americans who own guns. You're talking about a culture war that the left has entered into in an area where it was unnecessary and directly polarizing for no reason, and the media are boosting this because the media have an agenda, and that agenda is to castigate everybody who they disagree with as deplorable. This is the demonization of people who have just basic political disagreements with you as morally evil actors.